welcome to the ET Auto EV Conclave 2018, presented by Mahindra Electric and powered by JBM Group. Now, I think I'm stating the obvious in saying that for electric vehicles to become a plausible and primary mode of mobility, the public industry and the private industry really need to work in tandem. So that brings up a question on many people's minds. What are the automobile manufacturers' approach to embracing electrification? And to address this very topic, may I please invite on stage the Vice Chairman of Toyota Kirloskar Motor, Vikram Kirloskar. Huge round of applause for him, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you for welcoming me to this function. Looking forward to talking a bit, giving my thoughts on the approach, electrification, and the approach for India. I have a number of slides. We'll go through the slides, and at the end, I'll be happy to take any questions. There have been so many comments from the government in various departments on electrification over the last 1 year. And we as a company keep thinking of what should be the approach to make a long-term plan. Should it be based on these various views that keep coming, or what should be the basic approach? So our basic approach has been, let us do what is good for India. And two things to me are important in what is good for India. One is a reduction in the use of energy and a reduction in emission. If we can achieve these two goals in the long term, then whatever plan we are doing will sell whichever way the policy goes. So that's my basic contention, and that's the way we are moving. So if I look at our preamble, this talk is not to promote any one technology, but my purpose is to create awareness on various possibilities, scientific facts, keeping India's interests first, and what is our contribution to a clean and sustainable automotive technology. Back to electric propulsion, it's not today's story, it's been there for a long time. It started with electric propulsion from 1896, and the change to IC cars was basically driving range, battery limitations, and charging infrastructure. But still, a lot of these issues, even after so many years, are still very relevant. How does Toyota look at electrifications? Does electric vehicle equal to electrification? Is it only a battery electric vehicle? For us, the way we look at it is electrification is a family of electric vehicles, whether it's battery, hybrid, plug-in hybrid, fuel cell, any other method to produce something which is more efficient. We look at three core technologies in an electrified vehicle. One is a motor, one is a battery, and one is a converter or an inverter. And using these three technologies, we see various combinations of whether it's a hybrid, a plug-in hybrid, a pure battery, or a fuel cell vehicle. In a fuel cell vehicle, essentially the engine is replaced by a fuel cell. When you look at technology, battery electric vehicle does not necessarily mean it's the cleanest technology, because we have to look at it in a very holistic way, from where the energy is sourced to where the energy is spent. The report on the left is a report from MIT based on their study in the US, and this is based on a study which is looking at the carbon usage throughout the life of the vehicle, right from producing it to the actual use. And it shows a small electric car has a lower carbon output. A small petrol car has a lower carbon output than a Tesla. So this is over the entire life cycle. A big petrol car has a much higher carbon output. This is what it shows, but that's an American one. This one is more interesting. This one has been done by engineers and professors at Indian Institute of Science based on Indian data. And they've done two analysis. One is a well-to-wheel analysis and one is a tank-to-wheel analysis, both for emissions as well as for efficiency. And I think this chart I'm circulating, you'll have an idea. Definitely on a tank-to-wheel basis for emission of an electric car or even a hydrogen-based car, it's zero emission. Whilst on a well-to-wheel basis, that's from the source of energy, it is not the lowest in emission. There are other technologies which show a much lower emission. Same thing on the energy. Energy use on a well-to-wheel basis as well as on a tank-to-wheel basis, and you see there are big differences when you look at it. So it's important, if we have to look at our energy consumption as a country, to look at technology of the future very holistically. So if we look at an India-first approach, the approach that maximizes the impact while minimizing the disruption would be the way we'd like to go forward as a company. There are important challenges we need to overcome for a successful electric mobility program. Gaining customer acceptance, so vehicle performance and cost is critical. There are many pathways with different trade-offs. Switch to clean energy while retaining Indian auto sector competitiveness, and India's unique context in terms of sources of energy, domestic capability, and potential of high imports. What are the challenges to EV adoption? And what are the consumers' perspectives? The challenges are cruising range, charging infrastructure, charging times, and the cost. I think this must have been discussed. And you have to break a number of barriers to get a better EV in this. Currently, on customer acceptance and society benefits, HEV is the best technology that what we've seen. It's still costly, but with higher volumes, it can become economically viable for the consumer. The penetration of electric vehicles and fuel cell vehicles depends on a very high performance battery, low-cost system, and infrastructure in the future. Like I said, there are many trade-offs we need to think about. Some questions include energy security is very important, so is manufacturing and jobs in the current situation. EVs will reduce oil import dependence, but what about dependence on electric vehicle parts and imports of lithium? We can speed up EV adoption, but how much value addition will be in India? Some segments and usage are easy. What about other vehicle segments? Can we invest huge amounts on incentives? Do we have the EV ecosystem? Do we have the infrastructure ready? Is it in our strategic interests? Is it easy to adopt for all vehicle segments? Are we sure that EV is the ultimate solution? There are a number of stories on the other side, which you can read. There are many multiple pathways, but each have different consequences. Faster creation of a local ecosystem is a must. XEV, electrification of vehicles, is the global approach, and I think it's going to be the approach in India as well. Electrification can cover virtually all segments, from scooters up to transport vehicles, and the global future would be an electrified vehicle. When we talk about pure electric vehicles, I think Paul was talking, as I heard him earlier in the earlier presentation, that even by 2030, in the best case scenario, if 40% are electric vehicle sales, there's still 60% of IC engine vehicles which will be sold. That's still 6.3 million vehicles. That's much more than the 3.5 today. So we have to consider what should be our strategy for the remaining vehicles besides the others as well. It's important. Otherwise, whatever efforts we are making and talking about fuel consumption reduction are not going to happen. This is, I think, a very important chart. What is our policy? We are fully aligned to the national priorities and are committed to an electrified future. We have a major environment challenge of 2050, which we are covering across the world, including India. And our environmental challenge is really composed our 6 individual challenges across 3 areas. The three areas are ever better cars, and the challenge is new vehicles with zero CO2 emission. And we are talking of life cycle. Life cycle, zero CO2 emissions. Ever better manufacturing, so the plant is with zero CO2 emission, and challenges of minimizing and optimizing water use. And enriching the life of communities by establishing a recycling-based society and systems, and also establishing a future society which is in harmony with nature. So essentially on one side CO2, and the rest is what we do with the environment, the rest of the environment. Toyota has had a long history on electrification, starting from 68 with various electric vehicles, also the first electric nickel hydride powered vehicle in 1996, then various other vehicles and hybrids. Of the global total of hybrids, battery electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids, etc., fuel cell, we have about a 43% market share. And we have been reducing carbon steadily and reduced more than 85 million tons of carbon. So what's our, again, finally, our basic vision? Grow India and grow with India. Toyota India will contribute to enrich the quality of life in India and help solve the societal problems by establishing high standards of safety, technology, quality, and CSR. With a spirit to constantly learn, teach, improve, and innovate, all our stakeholders and families will collaborate to make India a better place. We will strive for excellence in sustainability, ensuring we are eco-friendly in our products, services, and customer experiences. I'm very happy to say that in our factory, in the CO2 work, reduction of carbon and water, we have stopped using fresh water in our plant in manufacturing cars. We use completely recycled or rainwater with a water-based paint shop. It's pretty unique in the world. Our energy consumption to produce a car is probably amongst the lowest in the world. This is through a lot of innovation and a lot of improvements in our way of working. The only hybrid vehicle which we are making in India is the first one, is a hybrid Camry. It has 48% better fuel efficiency over a conventional gasoline variant. The emissions are much lower than the BS6 targets, almost half the BS6 targets using BS4 fuel. So some more repeat of what I said earlier. We are committed to an electrified future, reduction in fossil fuel consumption, retain competitiveness, reduction in carbon intensity. Our commitments have been made to COP21, and reduction in emissions, especially city pollution. There have been some recent Toyota announcements. Globally, 50% of all cars by 2030 to be electrified vehicles. Currently, Toyota produces about 1.4 million electric vehicles per year. We are in our fourth generation of electrified technology, that is motors, batteries, and converters, and we'll be slowly going to the fifth generation starting from next year. When I say fourth generation, the difference is the fourth generation motor, for example, compared to the first generation, is 8 times better, half the size and 4 times more efficient. The fifth generation ones are even better. And we will introduce electric cars in India jointly with Maruti. They'll be made in India. Thank you very much. This has been a little more technical and information-based, factual, I think, presentation rather than much of my opinion. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
My name is Akash. I'm from Exicom. We make EV batteries and chargers. So one thing is that on the battery side, we are looking at that these OEMs are having different kind of technologies to look at. So lithium-ion, solid state, within lithium-ion, you have NMC. So what do you think is, how is the roadmap going to go, and how should the industry prepare to serve that? So what is your view on that?
See, I think there's a lot of evolution going on in batteries. Toyota announced at the auto show in Tokyo that they have a new solid-state post-lithium battery, which they will launch in a car in 2020 or 2021 or something like that. Okay. There's going to be continuous work on batteries, continuous work on better capacitors. It's always going to evolve. So I think when you look at how to invest, I think in the charging infrastructure, it's very clear you're going to require the charging infrastructure. It's very easy to talk of charging infrastructure with 1 or 2 points in an apartment block, but if everyone owns an electric car and you have a charger for every garage, then you require a huge pipeline connected to that apartment block, a power pipeline. So there are a lot of other, I think, questions which are required to be answered. In terms of where to invest in battery technology, it's a hard one.
What are Toyota's plans, basically, just to...
Like I said, Toyota's talking about the new solid-state battery, which they'll bring out in 2020, I think, or 2021.
Okay. It's going to be a combination of
cars. Sorry?
It's going to be a combination of NMC and then solid-state.
I have no idea. No one seems to know what it is about. It's only just called solid-state.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
So my question to you is this. Whether we go with ICE or electric vehicles, the material composition of the car is going to change structurally to make them lighter. So what are your views on that? Because India in itself doesn't make a lot of engineering plastics, or to that matter, a lot of alloys. So what's Toyota's plan on that front?
See, basically, Indian government is following CAFE guidelines, and we have a very tough CAFE guideline, which is Corporate Fuel Efficiency Norms guideline. I think first one is 2017, then we have 22, which are very, very tight guidelines. So if you want to meet those guidelines, you have to lighten your vehicle, you have to get more efficient in your overall energy usage. So I think all manufacturers, if you see all their vehicles coming out, are coming out with lighter vehicles. We have a dual challenge to it. We have to come out with lighter vehicles, yet meet new enhanced safety standards, which require higher strength steels, higher strength, better design. You have frontal crash, which means frontal pedestrian safety crash requirements, which require a bigger front end to do the same. So there are a lot of challenges, and I think everyone is working. The regulation is pushing the technology.
But what about those materials are again being imported? Nobody is talking about those. For example,
I think a lot of companies are doing the work here. If you look at, probably Maruti has the largest R&D center in India, producing a lot of new cars, and they are doing all the work for the new vehicles coming out to meet these regulations. And you can only meet these regulations if you're doing that work.
I have heard that Toyota is serious about hydrogen. Many other OEMs have stopped working on hydrogen, have shifted over to EVs, but Toyota is still believes that hydrogen could be one of the potential fuel of the future. Is Toyota having any plans for bringing hydrogen vehicles to India? And do you think hydrogen as a fuel will work for a country like India, considering the infrastructural requirements?
See, what I understand on hydrogen, on the fuel cell, it's a very expensive technology right now. But as I explained to you earlier, the basic composition of a hydrogen car is an electrified vehicle, where again you have the motor, the battery, and the inverter or the converter to manage the power in the car. So hydrogen is a source of power through a fuel cell in the car. So the cost difference is really the fuel cell and the hydrogen storage is on one side, and the infrastructure to produce hydrogen and supply to the car on the other side. Toyota is pursuing hydrogen for a long time, has been pursuing and is continuing to pursue. There are many more people who have joined Toyota in this hydrogen usage. I was talking with certain people who have an idea about the hydrogen, who are doing research on hydrogen in India, and they say India has a hydrogen surplus in terms of hydrogen availability. Hydrogen can be produced by many other ways besides just electricity and water. There are many new ways coming out of how to produce hydrogen. Again, if you looked at the earlier charts, it may not be the cleanest technology on a well-to-wheel basis because you need to produce hydrogen somewhere. If you're going to use coal to produce hydrogen, it doesn't have any meaning as far as I'm concerned in here. There's some advantages on a hydrogen vehicle. To fill it up, it takes the same time as a normal gasoline car or a diesel car, a couple of a minute or two. You can get ranges, 300, 500 kilometer range. So there are advantages. The cost is the biggest disadvantage, infrastructure. I think Japan and California are putting in a hydrogen infrastructure right now.
Toyota has invested globally in a mobility service company. So do you see this trend coming to India as well, and Toyota will be bringing it to India?
There's Mr. Toyoda, Akio Toyoda has talked a lot about being a holistic mobility company, I think yesterday in Las Vegas, and that he wants to attack all areas of mobility in the world and be a supplier for all of that. At present in India, we are focusing really on, if I look at what our long-term strategy is really looking at how we do better on carbon and we produce better cars. We have not looked at getting into the rest of the mobility areas as of now.
Sir, I want to understand, globally we've been talking about hybrid vehicles will actually gain.
Sorry,
There's a debate between ICE, electric and hybrid. So hybrid will, the global PPTs we are sharing that hybrid will also gain significantly. What I wanted to understand in terms of total cost of ownership, if we compare ICE, hybrid and electric, isn't hybrid more costlier because you'll have both electric powertrain and IC powertrain, whereas in electric you'll have only one part of it. So how does it compare on the total cost of ownership for hybrid and electric versus IC?
See, right now, if you look at hybrid vehicle sales around the world, they are largely being sold without any support. When they started 20 years ago, there was a lot of government support till the volumes built up. And currently, Toyota's hybrid volumes are more than 1.4 million vehicles a year. I'm sure the same thing, and now the support has also come down. If you look at government support for hybrids over the years, that has come to almost zero. So it's a competitive product on its own merits. There's still strong electric support for electric vehicles around the world, a lot of incentives and various things which are going on, which will eventually also come down as that technology gets competitive and the availability of better batteries, better motors, better range controllers and all that happens. So that's what I expect. Technologies start expensive at the beginning. As the volumes go up, the cost starts coming down.
No, just a follow-up on that. What I want to understand is in electric and hybrid, if you put the same battery, in the sense the range is comparable in an electric and hybrid, then hybrid
you don't need a motor in the hybrid. You can get rid of the motor.
Okay. Great.
Okay, it's the same thing. You just the way our technology is if you put you put a bigger battery, you don't need the motor. The car runs without an engine.
Well, thank you. That is all we have time
Thank you.
for. But Vikram, thank you for adding that unique dimension to the conversation.